Hello, welcome to the Food for Air Day 2020, the largest ever broadcast on feeding the planet, organized by the Future Food Institute and the FAO, the e-learning academy, for the 50th anniversary of the Earth Day. During this virtual global mission, we will cover a number of thematic areas such as sustainable development goals, climate smart agriculture, water and soils management, sustainable food systems and nutrition, and food safety and rural poverty. This session is the session number 18, and it's from Mexico, specifically from Mexico City. My name is Carla Gonzalez, and I'm part of the alumni of Food Innovation Program, and also lead ambassador of the Future Food Institute in the Mexican hub. I'm super excited to be here with you. This global mission, it feels like we are traveling, but at the same time, we're at home. So it's a good opportunity. We started in China and now we are moving to Latin America. In the next 60 minutes, we will talk about sustainable practices and lessons in the food systems. And to start with this topic, I would like to introduce our guests. First is Kakoli Ghosh, Agriculture Officer at FAO Plant Production and Protection Division. Cassia Moraes, Founder and CEO of Youth Climate Leader. Stephen Epkins, Founder and CEO of Rice Exchange. Christian Schmitz, CMO and Head of Asia at the Rice Exchange. And Moline Johnson, Professor at UNAM University in Mexico and Coordinator of Semillas de Vida organization. So hello, everybody. So we will start with Kakoli. Kakoli, hello, how are you?
Hi, good evening. Good evening from Rome. I'm joining from Rome, so very good evening and good morning and good afternoon to everyone who is joining out there.
Great, so it's night for you, it's evening. So I was watching to one of your videos and it caught my attention that when you were talking about genetic diversity, you talk about food and taste, and you give an example about that. A better way to understand this is to see the colors in a market, and it caught my attention because I'm Mexican and we have a very colorful markets here. So I don't know if you want to give us more an introduction and tell us why this genetic diversity is related with these sustainable practices.
Oh, thank you. First of all, thank you very much also to the Institute for organizing this absolutely innovative approach to engaging. I have been hearing since morning all the interviews, and I think they have been extremely energetic, enthusiastic, and idea-filled. So this is what we need for changing the food systems. So thank you very much for taking this great initiative. Now, from what you asked is actually right now I'm working in the Sustainable Agriculture Management team. So of course I'll speak of genetic diversity and the value of the genetic diversity, which is my area of specialization, but also of the 5 or 6 basic good practices, that we need to do in order to maintain genetic diversity, maintain all the good parts of agriculture. Like we talk of food systems, but bottom line is we have to have good agriculture to have good food systems. And good agriculture needs good practices. One of the first thing of good practices is to ensure diversity, ensure this genetic diversity that we are eating and finding all the varieties, the colors in the market that you put into the shops. For instance, all our FAO in particular, we are very much interested in maintaining the ex situ and in situ germplasm of this diversity. In the countries, we allow an exchange and ensure that countries can have access to the best germplasm for breeding, for growing, for taste. And if you notice nowadays, lots of people are always looking for quality food, high value product, heirloom products. These are essentially genetic diversity that you are looking for, sometimes the lost taste and so forth. So this is the number one critical aspect of genetic maintaining the genetic diversity in ways that countries can ensure food security across. So that's the first one. The second top practice that we want to talk about, and I want to share because it's linked with genetic diversity, is to maintain innovations with traditions. Genetic diversity is about culture, is about agriculture, culture, and variety. So, in that, if you have to innovate, you must innovate with your traditions. And innovations can make more content, make value when it is brought along with much more people on the table. So, that's the third point as a good practice that FAO is promoting very strongly is to have everybody on the table. Everyone who matters should be on the table. Now, what does that mean? This is because of ecosystems. If we are wanting to maintain an ecosystem which is produces sustainable agriculture, helps us maintain our livelihoods, our incomes, as well as environmental and social dimensions, we need people on the table. It simply cannot be one person or two groups making decisions for everybody. This dialogue is fundamental. And again, I do work in Latin America, and you know the value of community approaches, participatory approaches. And this is very important for genetic diversity as well, because farmers are our best custodians. They have far more knowledge in terms of traditions and maintaining the varieties, maintaining in situ and ex situ occasionally, which we have found. So we need to have everybody on the table. And the third one, which I want to share with you, and I'm glad you asked, this is about having some kind of access of communities more open. This is today in the world of digital age and digital advances, we have to find a way to make sure all the good practices, all the better ways are shared extensively, whichever way. And this is why I very much appreciate this session, because we get a chance to talk to each other, learn from each other, and build on knowledge. So this is again very, very critical in terms of trying to, let's say, enhance the best practices. Finally, what we have been doing very recently is trying to look at land degradation, watershed management, things in agroforestry, pastoralism, trying to find what are the few best practices that come out from one decade of FAO's projects and practices. If we can find a set of solid good practices which have been tested on the ground and can be assuredly used to support the SDG goals, support agriculture, water management, or biodiversity management. And we have found a few of them which are extremely fascinating because they are not rocket science. They are very basic, and they all need to be done in a way that bring together all these good practices that we are talking about: capacity building, the knowledge sharing, and so forth. So what are these best practices? I already mentioned combining tradition with innovation. This is very important. The second one is very important, is to put women in the center. We can think of all the diversity on earth, but if women and the smallholders, who are actually the real workers in the field, are not put in the center, projects and programs are not very sustainable, particularly when they are working with production related to genetic diversity. The third, I already mentioned, to bring everybody to the table. Success is defined by trying to bring everybody on the table. And fourth, finally, is to make sure that we are really talking to each other in terms of taking small actions which can make big impact. There can be a series of small actions, but to be consistent on how we can take these actions together in order to make a big impact when we are talking of changing the way we can change the food systems in terms of increasing sustainability, increasing smallholders in participation, increasing local food production. The pandemic has shown us the value of local food production. So I think these are the four main points I wanted to share with you. But of course, we are open throughout the conversation to speak more. Thank you.
Do you listen to me? Okay, now. Okay, so you were talking about combination with tradition with innovation, to put the woman in the center and to have small actions, but consistent actions. And yeah, I definitely think that it's three important things that we're gonna keep talking with all the rest of the guests. And I just want to share this phrase that is very related with what you're saying, that if today we are recognizing the work of the doctors, soon we would like to hug our farmers. And it's totally true, no? Because it's also in the field where they are the real heroes. So thank you very much. Now we are moving to talk with Mylene. Am I saying right your name? Mylene Johnson.
That's excellent.
Please.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, I'm Malin Johnson, and I have been working with aspects of smallholder farmer production of maize from different aspects during the last 11 years. And now I'm coordinating an organization that's called Semillas de Vida, which means seeds of life. So I really agree what Kakoli said with everything she said. I really agree with that. We actually work a lot. The last 12 years, we have worked with farmers and with projects that we characterize the maize and really recognize the farmers, the small-scale farmers, as the main, well, like you said, custodians of maize and of the biodiversity in general. Well, we work mainly with maize because here in Mexico, as you well know, almost everybody, but as you might know, it's hard when you're supposed to change the chip to the English one. I'm gonna just try to find it, but yeah, here in Mexico, we are the center of a region of maize, corn, as you all might know as well, but maize, it's also it's more the word we use in Spanish, but it's also a word you can use in English. And actually, it's thanks to the smallholders, this small-scale farmers, that during the last 8 or 10,000 years that have actually developed the maize, because in the beginning it was quite small, it was quite similar to wheat, and generation after generation they were selecting and saving the maize and improving the maize. And today there are these big cobs. Of course, I have my cobs here because here in Mexico we have these, it's not just the yellow maize, it's not just the white maize, we have these different colors from red to blue, for example, for all different colors, orange, white, pink. And really, that's why we concentrate with our projects, firstly to characterize the varieties of maize, because here in Mexico we have about 64, we call them, I don't know exactly what you call them in English, but we call them different types of races within the species. And we have, of course, thousands of different varieties. So it's very, so we don't have them all characterized. So this is like the first step. And we also know that this genetic biodiversity, that it's in the hands of the small scale farmers, it's constantly developing. So that's why we want to characterize and say also to the farmers, look at this marvelous maize that you have brought to the world, because today it's one of the, it's the biggest grain produced in the world, right? It's even bigger than rice, it's even bigger than wheat. And that's why we also, and the small scale farmers, they are the ones that are holding the biodiversity, because in every plant that they, with the land-raised maize, every plant is unique. It's like the people. I usually say one person is unique, but the improved maize, they call it improved maize, the conventional improved maize or the genetically modified maize, they we know that they're homogenic. It's the same genes, all of the plants. So that's also why the land-raised maize is so important, because it has this resilience against, for example, climate change, and generation after generation, they keep on developing. And the real improvers of maize are the small scale farmers. So that's why we really think it's important, but also like working in different parts of the the value chain because it's very important that the consumers know about the maize here, because in Mexico we eat mostly white maize, and everybody knows the white maize, right? But some of my students in the university, they actually don't know that we have blue maize and we have red maize, and it's something that we need to teach, and we need to spread it to really reevaluate the production of maize, because now the market is deregulated, so we pay very, very low prices for the maize, and that's also showing that the farmers, how much they actually value in a way. I don't want to value the maize with money, but it's just really showing them that your maize is not worth more than the maize, the genetically modified maize, homogenic maize, and we want to really try to reevaluate this production. So one path is to characterize the maize, but we're also working with the consumers and spreading the knowledge about the maize. Actually, here in Mexico, we have about 700 registered dishes that are prepared from the maize. So it's a huge part of our food culture, and it's a huge part of the health. It's actually very interesting when we've seen with this sustainable production, from the sustainable production and genetic diversity aspects. We have this system that you might know about it, many of you, but it's called the milpa. And the milpa is marvelous because it's a thing that you have used here it's a production system, and it's actually it's a much more than a production system, but it's a production system we have used here in Mexico and Mesoamerica for thousands of years. And it's where we have the maize as the axis of the milpa, and then we have the beans, as you well know, maybe a lot of you, legumes. I think it's called legumes in English. They actually, they fixes the nitrogen and they give the the fertilizing the maize on it. So it's a cooperation between these two. And of course, the three sisters, as you say in English. And the third is zucchini, but you can also the zucchini is protecting the roots of the whole thing, and they're cooperating in this. But you can also add, of course, chile. Here in Mexico, it's you have to add the chile, and it's also, you have the tomatoes, you have the green tomatoes. Actually, there are about up to 60 different species in one milpa, and this milpa system in itself is very sustainable, because you won't use chemicals, because then they are killing the beans, for example, and then it doesn't work. So it's a very good way of reproducing the genetic diversity, and this is one of the things that we support. But also with what we do in Seeds of Life, we work with another level, like the legal level. For example, we are part of the class action that since 2013 here in Mexico, it's illegal to sow the genetically modified maize. So they can't sow it, and we are still waiting for the trial, but we have as opponents Bayer, Monsanto, Pioneer, and all these transnational corporations that want to sow the genetically modified maize. And also recently, actually in March, we succeeded. We were supporting this law that's called Foment and Protect Landrace Maize. So it's actually a law that started now in middle of April. That's now it's approved, and it's now it's valid, and it's actually making the maize, the landrace maize, as a part of the human rights of all Mexicans. So it's sort of a new way of looking at how can we protect this genetic biodiversity that really is the essence and the most important thing, well, not the most important thing, but one of the most important things in the sustainable agriculture production. And so we work with that, but we also think it's very important with alliances. So we are part of La Campaña Sin Maíz No Hay País, and it's called that because it means the campaign with no maize, there is no country. Because with no maize in Mexico, there is no country, because it's such a big part of our history, our culture, and every different parts of our daily life, mainly. But we're also part of the Alliance for the Maize Tortilla. The maize tortilla, I'm calling it maize tortilla, so there won't be any misunderstandings, because some people might think about, I don't know why, but the Spanish tortilla. Of course, for us, the maize tortilla is only tortilla, but we call it maize tortilla because when we in this alliance, we get together, consumers, and also people that sell this tortilla. It's like the baker shops in France. Here we have the tortillas that's specialized in tortilla, and also with the smallholder producers. And we're looking how we can actually support every in all the chain of the supply chain, all the supply chain. So one of the things that we're trying to imagine, I know here we might talk a little bit more about it with this blockchain idea. We want to create this virtual virtual barn. It's like a place where the small scale farmers producers of landrace maize, where they can put, I have this to sell, and it's this landrace, it's this color, it's this price, and also then the buyers can also go into this platform. I'm imagining it as a digital platform and say, I want to buy this, because now it's one of the main one of the main problems for the small scale maize producers in Mexico is that the price is very low, and that they don't have the buyers, because most of them are in the mountains, like in the south. It's far away, and the consumers might be, of course, in the village, but also in the big cities, because now the demand is actually increasing for these maizes. And so it's very important to make this connection between the small scale farmers and the ones that wants to buy the maize. I don't know how much time maybe I can pause there.
We need to give the word to someone else, but thank you very much. You were talking about to recognize the farmers, which are the main custodian of the campo, the field, and the impact of the new generations, and as well as the use of the milpa and the virtual barn that I'm sure that we're going to talk more about the blockchain in the last part of this block. But now we're moving with Kasia. Kasia, are you with us? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation and for organizing.
So we're going to talk about, Kasia is part of the youth climate changers.
Climate leaders, yes.
Climate leaders.
Yes, and we are network present in, we have members from 21 countries, and our goal is to help young people to start their careers on climate change. So really take action for a problem that is the crisis of this century. So perhaps to start talking about two different crises, because if we are here on this Zoom, it's because of something that is happening worldwide. That is the coronavirus pandemics. And interestingly, I just published an article in Brazil about it. And one of the many things that we were talking about, the similarities of climate change and coronavirus, what we can learn from the coronavirus crisis. One of the things that they share in common, that they have in common, is that one of the causes, which is the consumption of animal products, and the way it is right now, very little people, almost no one, is talking about how did it started, but it was because of consuming sylvester animals, and other pandemics that we had in the past were more related to industrial livestock. So it's very important to reflect on how we are consuming as humanity, and what we consume and how it's produced. And I feel that very little, almost no one is talking about it. So I think it's important to make this connection about food as a source of pandemics, because of course there are other factors involved, but the way it started and how we got the contact with the virus happened that way. And the similarity with the climate change is 1/4 of global emissions is somewhat related with what we call agriculture, forestry, and other land use. And in the country I come from, which is Brazil, this is much higher. 44% is related to land use, and most of it deforestation. Not all of it for livestock, because there's a lot of land grabbing, and the productivity of the livestock that is related to the Amazon is not high. There are other farmers that do it in a much better and sustainable way. And 25% comes directly from agriculture and livestock. So they combine the highest share of our emissions. So it's important to reflect on how we produce. And I feel like youth are more open to changes and to think about the impact of diets and consider buying local and other and other things. So when I was working in the Brazilian Forum on Climate Change, government officials, older ones, they were talking about intensifying livestock as almost the only measure to pursue on that. And at the same time, I saw a lot of people, younger people, pushing for Meatless Monday, and I saw last year in that Beyond Meat was the largest IPO at NASDAQ. So there's a lot of things happening, and I feel most of the older generation, they are not following. Like when we saw that in Brazil, they were Embrapa, which is the largest government agency for agriculture, they were predicting that in like 2050 the livestock would be like 300 million in Brazil. Right now it's 200 million, but I don't think they are considering, for example, this. And this is, and even during lockdown, there was an increase in the US and of consumption of plant-based products. So I think some people might be thinking about it. But I really like yesterday that I was part of the Good After COVID that the Future Food Institute organized. And the framework that Abby, the visual facilitator, used was like drawing the past and the future, and like what are the differences. So I use this like for making like few recommendations in the little time I have. And one of the things, like with the coronavirus crisis, and that it's also good for climate change, like the behavior change, trying to buy more locally. We saw the disruption of global markets, so it's important to strengthen like familiar agriculture, like smallholder farmers, local food, if possible, with very little use of chemicals. And this reduce the emissions of transportation as well. And it's also like more, we have like this security, food security that we need. Another thing is like the role of regenerative agriculture, such as agroforestry, and combining, there's what we call in Brazil, integração lavoura, pecuária, floresta, which is like integration of plantation, livestock, and forest in the same system. And in Brazil only, there is about 11.5 million hectares like using this kind of production. And 84% of the livestock producers are satisfied, and they would like to increase even like the share of the land using this source. And because right now, if you see, agriculture is a huge source of greenhouse gas, but it can also be, together with these innovative arrangements, a way of capture greenhouse gas, mostly carbon dioxide. And another thing that we see the food waste issue, that a lot of young people are really concerned with the zero waste movement, and food waste is a big part of it. And of course, if you're wasting food, you're wasting emissions that produce this food, and you can waste this on production and on consumption. And if you go back again, and remember having a class with Professor Jess Fanza from FAO back then, and like during my master's, and we discussed how like at some point, even the obesity pandemics that we have now is a kind of food waste, because we are producing empty calories. We are producing food like such as KFC chicken wings that has so many calories, and people shouldn't eat like only from this source. And this has emissions, so we should reflect. I think now I closed my statement yesterday on the Good After COVID webinar, saying about like now we see the strength of the word essential. What is essential in the two meanings that it can have? Like essential in a way that what is like the things that I cannot live without it. So like we should focus on that, and a lot of the times we don't. And what are the things or like activities that are essential in a way that they are connected with my essence? And I see the young people are really trying to reflect on that, and perhaps we were already promoting some of those changes. And I think with this time and this urgency, this will happen even faster. And just the last comments, and I would like to thank at Youth Climate Leaders, we have academic advisory council, like composed by several researchers worldwide, and they help me with some of these talking points. So crowdsourcing is also something that young people make a lot, and I think is a way to make it better. And one of the reports that they shared like as a source was from the World Resources Institute, trying to summarize the points from the last IPCC report on land use, that I think is a good source for thinking about climate change and agriculture links. And as I was talking, in the case, this is more like in the case of Brazil, but like in Brazil, because of our emissions from land use, we emit up to 5.2 gigatons of carbon oxide equivalent, but we sequestrate, and this is an annual average considering 2007 and 2016, about 11.2 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So there's like they are now, and this has changed unfortunately because of deforestation, but right now like we are, this is about like 3 times the emissions of Brazil. So it's important to see that forests and agriculture are one of the most important tools that we have this decade to face what I think will be the hardest crisis that we will face. And if the coronavirus showed us something, it's how bad it is to live in a world in disruption. So I think I hope that this will increase awareness and make us reflect on what can we change to avoid even worse crisis that is also coming. Thank you very much. I think you're on mute, Carla.
Sorry, I don't get used to this microphone. So no, thank you, Kasia. Thank you very much. And yeah, we were talking about a new generation that is more conscious, that some similarities that we found with this crisis is that the consumption of animal products, that now people is more aware of the food that they're eating. Now they are more at home. They buy from more local producers. They are cooking more. So there is an awareness about what we are eating. And about also the food waste, all this consciousness, we need to take advantage of this generation that is more conscious, that is more awake, and that they want to something about it. So now we move, I don't know if we move directly with Christian or Steven. Do you want to show your presentation?
I go first?
Hello.
Hi.
Steven. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're from Rice Exchange, and we are going to talk about blockchain and how this help us in the food system and some learnings about this.
Thank you very much. Yes, so thank you first of all to Future Food Institute and FAO for inviting us. You know, I think one of the big lessons that we're learning about the way that the world works is the need to have global communities, even when you can't fly around, even when you can't meet people at conferences. And this is a fantastic example of how we're doing that. We're able to connect people all over the world virtually, which is much more efficient. It's much cheaper, doesn't cause so much pollution. And we're a good example of that. So our company, we don't have an office. We have people in, I think, 10 countries around the world. I'm in Spain. Christian is in Tokyo. So when you offered us a few slots, we had to choose which slot would allow both of us to take part. And so you know, not only as a company are we, I would say, prepared for what's happening, but also if you look at what Rice Exchange is trying to do, it's very much about allowing people and allowing both consumers and producers of rice to connect with each other at times like this, okay? When supply chains are stressed, when you really do need the transparency, and that's where the blockchain comes in. Now is really the time for us to show a new way of doing business. So let me just share my screen, and then I'll go through a couple of slides. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry. Okay, so what is Rice Exchange? Rice Exchange is transforming the highly fragmented international rice trade into a modern global marketplace by introducing trust and efficiency. Our platform is a one-stop shop where buyers and sellers and service providers can conduct trades, arrange insurance, shipping, inspection, and settlement. Now, I don't want to make this into a competition, and I know one of the other people on this conference was telling us that corn is the biggest agricultural commodity. I think they're both very big, but it's certainly, if you look at the number of people that consume rice every day, I believe it is the largest and most important source of calories around the world. I think corn is number 2, but it's clearly, both of them are very, very important for keeping people fed. It's also very important as a source of livelihood. If you look at the number of people that produce rice every day, number of people that depend for their livelihoods on producing rice, we estimate it's almost 1 billion people in the world. So it's the biggest employer in the world. And any improvement you can make to the way that rice is bought and sold and delivered will impact a huge number of people at both ends of the chain. It will improve the livelihood of people that are growing the rice and also the people that are consuming it. It's also very, very important in terms of food security. So at times when you have variable harvests, you could have a good harvest in one country and also a good harvest in another country. You could have a drought in one country. It's really important that you have some flexibility in the system. And if you look at the international trade in rice, it's growing over 5% per annum. All the estimates predict that's going to continue. And it's an important part of ensuring that there's flexibility within the supply chain to make sure that people always have enough food to eat. I'm going to hand now over to Christian, who's going to introduce some of the key themes that we at Rice Exchange are focusing on and the way that we hope to make an impact. Christian.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I'm Christian. I'm in charge of marketing for Rice Exchange, and we have been using these slides already at the COP25, the climate conference last year, in the time when people were still allowed to travel. So we, like Stephen already said, we use blockchain, we use the Hyperledger, and that, and we also integrate the inspection companies. So it's very important to have provenance and traceability among the food supply chains. And we can see several times we also mentioned the word smallholder farmers. 95% of rice farmers are actually smallholders, and they are most vulnerable to climate change impacts. So maybe, can you switch to the next slide? So our solutions will also lead to higher incomes for the smallholder farmers because we have verifiable certification of sustainable best practice. We work together with the Sustainable Rice Platform, which was convened by the United Nations. And introducing the SRP standards combined with verifiable provenance solutions will help boosting prices from farmers by 10 to 20%. Next, please. And the contribution to climate change is also apparent because rice farming emits 10% of all global man-made methane emissions. So it's not only CO2, it's all the greenhouse gas emissions. And this is because we have this anaerobic decomposition. Rice fields are flooded by water. We have the rice straw, which compiles in this water, and this is emitting methane. So if we introduce more efficient water management, this can reduce the emissions by 25 to 50%. And I think this was also mentioned by Kakoli Ghosh, that not only high-tech, but also low-tech innovation can help to boost positive effects. Yeah, then we can reduce food waste, and this is related to the dramatic improvements in the supply chains, which we aim to increase the efficiency of the supply chains by digitalization, first of all, and then also by introducing the blockchain by up to 90%. Next, please. And finally, food security. In the beginning of this week, the G20 agricultural ministers were coming together because there is a rising concern about unrest because of food security. And in these times of COVID-19, it's really crucial that the most vulnerable people are supplied with food in order to avoid unrest. And it is already now expected that the number of immigrants, migrants from, especially from Africa, will double by next year because of this crisis, which will cause food shortages. When we have food shortages, we mentioned the example here. In the Philippines, in September 2018, there was a large typhoon, and 250,000 tons of paddy rice were destroyed, and this shortfall had to be imported. So with a digital solution and the increase in efficiency, also with an additional layer of trust which Rice Exchange can provide, we can also contribute to food security. Next, please. Would you like to continue here?
Yeah,
Stephen?
let me take over.
Yes.
And I'll get through this reasonably quickly, so we have time for questions for everybody.
Yeah, we have two more minutes, so we can have some time.
Okay. All right. So just very quickly, how are we going to do this? The big issue right now is that you have an ecosystem where people are not connected and they're not sharing trusted data. So there's always a question about is the information or the documents that they're receiving, are they original? Do they reflect reality or not? And that's really where the blockchain and the transparency piece comes in. These are some of the ways that we help to improve conditions for people in the industry. We have price discovery. We have an integrated solution with service providers. We have a smart contract, and we have easy and fast execution. A key partner in this is Fujitsu. Fujitsu is actually one of the founders of Hyperledger, and we have developed a really strong relationship with them. They have a global presence. They're in most of the countries where we're operating, and we're very excited about exactly what that relationship is going to bring. Just some estimates, what we believe that we're going to be able to help to save stakeholders, both in time and in terms of cost savings. These cost savings will be primarily spread to the bottom and to the top of the chain. So it's going to go to producers and it's going to go consumers. Any efficiency saving we're able to make will ultimately end up at either end. A little bit more about transparency, why blockchain is so important. It basically makes all of these different actors able to see, they share common information which they can all trust. And I'd be delighted to answer any more questions that you may have.
Thank you, Stephen and Christian. Do you listen to me? Yeah. Thank you, Stephen and Christian. Yes. We were talking about the need to have a global communities, this important connection between the producers and the consumers, and how this helps us to have transparency, efficiency, security, reduce food waste, and increase this food security that we need. We have just few minutes left. Thank you for everybody. I don't know if we have some questions from the audience, or if someone wants to add something to the conversation.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that. Yes. So with the Rice Exchange, since last year, we have been onboarding early adopters. And at the moment, our platform is actually going live. So now we are screening the market participants. We do a KYC screening because we want to build a trusted platform. And so if anybody watching out there is interested in coming onto Rice Exchange to actually trade rice, then of course we are happy to guide everybody through.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It was a great conversation. I have a little of important things that we were talking about during our conversation. Earth is asking us for working together to connect as a global community. Our world at the end is a village, and we all have a role in it. To make our food systems more sustainable, we have some lessons we learned. We need to use tradition combined with innovation. We need to have more transparency, efficiency. We need systems that help us to reduce food waste, food security. We need to definitely put women in the center and to recognize our farmers. And of course, use the energy of our young generations that we are there with this energy to start. So I think that we will need to close in 2 minutes more. So if someone wants to add something, I think it was very, very inspiring, all the insights that we have. And
Carla,
can I ask a question to Malin? Sure. Oh, sorry. You go first, please.
Oh, no, I didn't have I wanted to thank everybody, and I think we should keep in touch after this. It would be very interesting. There are plenty of questions, which is perhaps not the place right now. I just wondered if I could share a very pertinent small poem that somebody just sent me by a Brazilian poet. And I thought it would be quite appropriate if, of course, the moderator allows. It's in English, but it is in Portuguese, but I will speak English, if that's okay with you.
Please, yes.
I think it's called, it is by the poet Alberto Sergio, which is Pessoa's poem, so I think Askia might recognize. Let me read it to you, and I really thought it might be really good fun. It says, I am a shepherd, the sheep are my thoughts, and all my thoughts sensations. I think with my eyes and ears, my feet and hands, my nose and mouth. To think a flower is to see it and smell it, and to eat a fruit is to know its meaning. And so, on a very hot day, sad at enjoying it so much, I lie flat in the grass, I close my hot eyelids, I feel all my body lying down in reality. I recognize the truth. I am happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a fantastically Earth Day poem I thought I should share. Thank you for the opportunity.
Very beautiful. Thank you, Kekoli. Okay, so I think it's time to move to Brazil. It's time to hand over to our next location with Julia Dalmadi. Are we ready?
Exactly, it's correct, Carla. Hi, everyone. I'm Francesco Castellana, and I'm community manager of the Future Food Institute. And as you said, now we are going to move to our next session. So as you can see, we went from Europe to America, fish from United States, then to Mexico, and now we go to South America, and the fifth country will be Brazil, and will be hosted by our Julia Dalmati. We are going to close now this session, but in a few minutes, we are going back online from our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Future Food Institute. So see you next.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Obrigada. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.